He was? Who's gonna tell the Sherman Brothers? Story time from Disney. Now, if you follow me on a regular basis, you know that I used to be a cast member. That's me! There's stories all over the place. Give me one. I'll take one. You know, normally I get these comments anytime I talk about Walt Disney, and I just block them because it's ridiculous. Like, so legitimately ridiculous. But today I'm feeling saucy. So let's get into it. Was Walt Disney a Snazi? Let's talk about the good and bad of Walt. I think a lot of people don't realize that Walt lived a long life. Walt Disney passed away in 1966 at the age of 65. He had a heart attack after he had surgery for lung cancer. Bet you didn't know that. When Walt Disney became famous for his animation, he was in his late 20s. And he didn't open Disneyland until he was 55 years old. So we're going to start with the negatives and then we're going to talk about the positives. Negatives. He fought against unions. Walt Disney was an old man in business in changing times, and he had a problem with control. He wanted to have full control over his business. So when the union strike happened at his animation studio, he felt like it was a stab in the back by his own animators. He couldn't understand why other people should have a say in his company. And that was bad. But that doesn't make him a Snazi. Now, before the Mustache Man took power in Germany, America and Germany were allies. And one of the German leaders, not the Mustache Man, asked for a tour of his animation studio. And Walt walked him around. And in hindsight, that was bad. But when he did this tour, it was while Germany and America were still on talking terms. But again, in hindsight, not a good look. Walt also in his older age became very paranoid about the Red Scare. If you don't know what the Red Scare was, it was when Americans thought that there were spies in Hollywood. Walt even thought some of his animators were spies. So again, not a positive. And that's all. So let's move on to the positives. Did you know that the Sherman Brothers were Jewish? Did you know that the still living Sherman brother still fights for Walt's name? He never understood where the anti-Semitic stuff came up. There's even a story that the Sherman Brothers tell that Walt had somebody tell them he wasn't going to work with the Sherman Brothers because they were Jewish, and Walt told him he needed to shut up his pie hole and get out of his office. Now this is where it gets interesting. Not only was Walt a veteran, during World War II, Walt Disney was making films for the army. During World War II, Walt Disney and his animation studio was making anti-German propaganda. They showed Nazis as being manipulative and controlling. He showed them as morally corrupt and showed the perils of fascism. He even gave the US military his animation studio to use as a base. Not only that, but he allowed the US government to use the likeness of his characters free of charge. You can still find patches with like Donald Duck on it fighting the Nazis. The US government also had him go to Latin American countries to help fight the idea of fascism. Now, we all know that there are some racist and sexist things in the cartoons that the animation studio made. Now, I want to say real quick, you realize that Walt wasn't the only one making choices on cartoons. And I'm not saying that washes away all the sin of it. But later, after he'd made the Three Little Pigs cartoon, he made a new one that was based off the idea that the wolf was Nazis. That short's called The Thrifty Pig. The strongest pig's house is made out of war bonds. Not only that, but Disney made his own war bonds. He also made cartoons where like Minnie Mouse saved bacon grease. It is said that his entire group of characters was used to fight on the war front. So not only was Walt not a Snazi, he fought against them with the US government. So where do all these claims that Walt was a Snazi come from? You're never gonna believe this, but the belief is that it came from an episode of Family Guy. I'm not saying the man was perfect. He definitely had a lot of flaws, especially in his old age. So anytime I hear somebody say something like this, I find it so uneducated and so ridiculous. And people spew it like facts, just like they say his head is frozen in the Matterhorn. Do you really think somebody that chain smoked like him wanted to live forever? I feel like his first step would have been stop smoking. That would have been way cheaper than cryogenically frozen. So no, Walt was not a Snazi. But at the end of his life, he was a paranoid, bitter old man. But the veteran fought with the US government against fascism only for you all to instantly say he was a fascist. We don't have to be happy with all the choices made by people in our past. But why are we going to make up something like that? Do more research than Family Guy. Still waiting for that one story. When you find it, write it down, put it in your mouth, and then hold your breath. We'll get to it eventually. But